Hello, everybody. Welcome to Exploring Ethics with Thibodeau and Kelley. I'm Kelley. You can see Dr. Thibodeau under those headphones. Um, and our discussions were interrupted uh, by, uh, by COVID-19, not to put a fine point on it. And so I think since we haven't done this, Jason, in a couple of weeks, I think we should start with a review of some things we talked about earlier. And I want to review three concepts. I want to review the concept of reasons and the concept of facts and the concept of value. Okay, so we're going to zip those through those three things. Now, as you recall, Jason, one of our favorite books by one of our favorite philosophers, that is On What Matters by Derek Parfit, begins with the following sentence. We are the animals that can both understand and respond to reasons. What does that mean, Jason?
Oh boy. Okay, well, it means, first of all, I guess that we're animals. Um,
Yeah, who is we that are animals?
Presumably, it's something like the human species. So I guess more directly, it's the author and the audience. Uh,
Yeah,
but
yeah, but he
but
means humans, doesn't he?
I yeah, I think so.
Because
I mean, we are
because
the animals. We are the kind of animal. That would mean that we, the human species, or human beings, are. Now, maybe somebody might say, well, but aren't there humans that can't understand reason? Uh,
well, I
and
mean, how good are you at understanding and responding to reasons while you're asleep?
uh, yes, so it's an ability. But my point would only be that there are probably some humans that don't have the ability and never will. Like that's just not in their
Like
realm of
folks who
capacity.
have suffered traumatic brain injury or were born without some big part of their
Right.
brain.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, with the provision that there are some people who have such a severe disability that they can't understand and respond to reasons. What we can say is typically, as a type, humans are capable of understanding and responding to reasons.
Yes. And of course, it's also interesting that while um, maybe humans are perhaps, well, maybe not perhaps, but we are the species that does this the best of all the species that we know, um, and other species that do so only, if at all, they don't do it very well or something like that. There could be other species that do that live on other planets, and one issue should be, well, are they? Is he suggesting a category that includes all individual biological creatures that can consider and respond, or that can understand and respond to reason? And
Yes.
I don't know. Probably we don't care about that. Probably that's not a big deal.
No, we don't. What we care about is understanding and responding to reason,
Yes. So
right?
what? So one thing would be, let's focus on that part. That seems to be more important. Why is that important? That we can understand and respond to reason. Um, well, I would say, while it's not immediately obvious upon reading that sentence, um, Parfit is writing this in a book about what matters because he thinks that what matters, what's significant, what's important is a matter of reasons, right?
Yeah.
And so ethical value, moral value, um, well, maybe that doesn't completely overlap with what matters, it's certainly a big chunk of what matters is ethical value and moral value. And so ethical value, moral value is a matter of reasons. Right? So
Yeah.
we act ethically when we are understanding and responding to reasons in the appropriate way.
Can you hear that there's a human who's not responding to reasons very well right now?
I can sense it because I know that everywhere in the world, at some point, there's a human not responding to reasons very well. But I take it you're talking about your granddaughter.
I am. She's three. I always say she's 3.5, but that's giving her more credit than she's due. She's not 3.5 yet. Um, and it is now 21 minutes past her bedtime. And she was just yelling up a storm out in the
I actually couldn't
hallway.
hear her.
You couldn't?
No.
Yeah, I think there's something in Zoom that's supposed to get rid of ambient sound.
Yeah.
Okay. So it would be better, wouldn't it, if she went to bed instead of yelling and screaming?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, it would
So
be better for her health. It would be better for our domestic tranquility. Um, there are a lot of good reasons for Imogen to go to bed, not too much after, say, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. I know you're out west. Uh,
till the middle of the afternoon.
yeah, so that's kind of a happy accident that we saw or heard, or I heard a demonstration of somebody not responding to reasons. Okay. And it also gives us an opportunity to say it's not that she lacks some mental faculty called reason or that it hasn't developed in her yet. It's that we could explain to her some of the many reasons why she should be going to bed right now. But, you know, would she understand and respond? I mean, lots of times she seems to, but tonight, not so much. Okay.
Yeah.
So notice if I'm going to say, Imogen, there are reasons for you not to stay up too late. There are reasons for you to go to bed at what for a 3-year-old is a healthy time. I'm going to refer to facts, like the fact that she's probably going to wake up pretty early in the morning. Now, we often have to wake her up. She doesn't wake up spontaneously sometimes, but that's likely because she didn't go to bed at a good hour. And her mom has to go to work, and Imogen has to go to nursery school, and so she has to get up in the morning. And if she hasn't had enough sleep, she doesn't feel well in the morning. And indeed, if she consistently doesn't get enough sleep, there are long-term health effects. And I also want to emphasize the social dimension that there are grown-ups who have to do grown-up things later in the evening. And when there is a child fussing and moaning and yelling and screaming, that makes everybody's life more difficult. So, reasons are closely related, are they not, Jason, to facts?
Yes, and it's certainly an aspect of the thesis of On What Matters that reasons are provided by facts.
Facts provide reasons, to put that in the
Facts
active.
give us facts give us reasons.
Yeah,
And said in that way, that it may not be clear exactly what that means. Another thing he says that may be slightly better is reasons are object given, not subject given. Right?
Mhm. Mhm. That's what we in the literary biz call prolepsis,
Uh,
sort of a
that
foreshadowing that we're going to talk about object and subject a little further. In fact, that's the real topic of our discussion tonight. Um, so I appreciate that little gesture in the direction of preview. Um, so yeah, that reasons come from facts, and facts are in the world of objects, the objective world, uh, the world of facts. And so um, our audience may get tired of this example eventually, but it's my favorite example of the relation of facts to reasons. And the fact is, this is an objective fact, has nothing to do with any subjective uh, preference or anything like that. The fact is that my wife, Marion, is allergic to the oils in orange peels. Um, and she gets respiratory irritation, sometimes somewhat severe if she's exposed to the oils in orange peels. So that's like a biochemical fact. And that fact gives everybody in the world a reason to peel our oranges somewhere where Marion is not. Um, the fact of Marion's allergy provides me and everybody else in the world a reason not to expose Marion to this substance to which she's allergic. Okay. Now we come to the tricky subject of value. And maybe we can use Marion's uh, orange peel oil allergy as an example. Because when she takes, breathes in uh, the oils from orange peels, she gets a really strong histamine reaction. That is to say, she gets this irritation, swelling. Um, it makes it hard for her to breathe, and that's very alarming. In and so it's not too strong to say that the oils in orange peels and her sensitivity to them cause her to suffer. And nobody can say that suffering is a good thing. Okay, now, um, there are characters in literature and indeed perhaps in Holy Scripture who will tell us that suffering is good. And it is true that actions that entail suffering sometimes lead to something good, but that's certainly not the case with an allergic reaction. So, uh, so I think what we could say is that an allergy is bad. It's a bad thing. Can we not?
yes, I think it would be in thinking about the point you were just making about suffering potentially leading to good things,
Mm-hmm.
actions that involve suffering leading to good things. It is worthwhile reminding ourselves of the distinction between intrinsic value, intrinsic goodness, uh, and intrinsic badness for that matter, and extrinsic goodness, right? So intrinsic goodness is the goodness that something has in and of itself,
Yeah,
not in virtue of things that it might cause, bring about, or be connected with.
yeah,
Extrinsic goodness is goodness that something has in virtue of the fact that in virtue of the things it brings about, causes, or connected with. And so suffering is intrinsically bad. It's bad in itself, but
hmm,
that's to say nothing about its extrinsic value. And so suffering can be both intrinsically bad and in some cases extrinsically good, if indeed in those cases it leads to something good, right?
yes.
So intrinsically bad, extrinsically good.
Um, you know, my offering a concrete example, you
Yeah.
know, I always got to give the disclaimer. I'm not entirely sure that my examples are going to be apposite, but if it's not, you'll tell me. But I think it's useful. It's certainly useful to me, and I think it might be useful for our audience if we can make sure that we give a concrete example that just makes the discussion more accessible, especially with this issue of value, because there's a lot of misunderstanding about it in the world. So my annual flu shot, uh, right? It hurts a little bit. I personally hate taking shots. Uh, you know, I mean, I'm a grown up, I can do it, but it's not my favorite thing to do. It hurts a little bit, but then uh, typically when I get a flu shot, my arm is sore for days. And, you know, it's unpleasant. Does it rise to the level of suffering? Well, yeah. I mean, it's a very minor form of suffering. You know, so I don't want to get poked with a needle and then get this substance that's going to make me sore. However, uh, a young fella my age can get into big trouble if he gets the flu. Also, I work with the public. I'm a teacher, and you know, I don't want to get other people sick. So I'm pretty conscientious about getting a flu shot as soon as it's available. And nowadays, friends, you can get your flu shot and your COVID vaccine vaccination at the same time, which is what I do. I never have a reaction to the COVID vaccination, but I usually have a reaction to the flu shot. So that flu shot would be an example of something that's intrinsically bad in that it makes me suffer a little bit, right?
So I'm not sure that that's right. I would say that the flu shot is extrinsically bad because it causes suffering, right?
Yeah,
Remember, extrinsic value is the value that something has in virtue of what it brings about. And what's important is that something can bring about good things and bad things. And so one and the same thing can be both extrinsically good and extrinsically bad,
that's what
right?
I was trying
And
to give an example of
yeah,
with the flu shot, but I didn't explain it very well. So you explain it one more time.
yes. So intrinsic and extrinsic value are just so they're distinct. So intrinsic value is the value that something has in and of itself, that is not because of what it's connected to or leads to. Extrinsic value is the value that something has in virtue of what it's connected to, what it causes, what it brings about. So something can be extrinsically good because it leads to good things, and one and the same thing can be extrinsically bad because it leads to bad things. But that doesn't tell us anything about its intrinsic value, right? And with respect to the flu shot, it's not clear that it has any intrinsic value. It seems like the flu shot only has extrinsic value, right? Suffering has intrinsic value, negative value that is intrinsically bad, but in some cases, it also has extrinsic goodness. So suffering is always intrinsically bad, and yet sometimes it can be in extrinsically good. So
Hmm.
the, the
Okay.
suffering that the suffering that you experience when you exercise might be extrinsically good, maybe. Better yet, the suffering that you experience Um, when you fall and hurt yourself is extrinsically good because it is an indication that your body's been damaged and it causes you to stop doing the thing that caused the damage, right?
Yeah.
So if you're running, so forget the falling down example. If you're running and all of a sudden you get this tremendous pain in your calf, right? You're going to stop, right? So the suffering that you're experiencing is extrinsically good because it's bringing about something good. It's getting you to stop doing something that is damaging to your
Injurious. Yeah.
body, right? So, but the suffering is still intrinsically bad, right? And there's no contradiction there. It's intrinsically bad, but extrinsically good. Now, just to put this in terms of reason, to say that it's intrinsically bad suffering is to say that we always have reason to avoid it, right? We always have reason to want that it not occur. That's what it is for it to be intrinsically bad. Now, reasons are pro tanto. We've talked about that in previous episodes. Pro tanto means to some extent a pro tanto reason by itself could be swamped by other reasons that point in the opposite direction, right? So we have reason to avoid suffering. That's because of the very nature of suffering, what suffering is. But sometimes we have reason to want that suffering occurs because of the extrinsic value of suffering, because of the things that suffering brings about. And sometimes that extrinsic value is enough to overcome the intrinsic badness of suffering. So you can make an overall judgment, right? An overall about a particular instance of suffering, like the suffering I have in my arm when I get the shot. Is that overall good? And I would say, yes, it is. It is overall good, even though the suffering I have is intrinsically bad, right? This particular suffering is associated with something good, namely immunity or reduced susceptibility to certain viruses, right? And so that extrinsic goodness is so sufficient that it overcomes the intrinsic badness of the suffering. And that means that overall we have reason to get the shot.
Okay. That's great.
I hope that makes sense.
It does. We got to be careful with our Latin and our Greek. And so pro tanto, so much, right? Up to a point, something like that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So things tend to be complicated. And so there can be reasons for and against something. And so we have to make a judgment, don't we? As to the decisiveness of the reasons. That is to say, are the reasons for stronger or are the reasons against stronger? Okay. This leads us, I think, to our topic, which is the role of the subject, the significance of subjectivity. And so let me start with a claim that sounds like a rather stark and brittle claim, which is that desires don't qualify as reasons. Is that true?
Desires don't provide reasons. More specifically, desires don't provide us with reasons to try to attain the thing that we desire.
Okay, how is that? How is that?
Yeah. Well, man, it's a tough question to answer right off the bat.
Okay, well then, what do we need to talk about in order to get to that question?
Perhaps we should say a little bit about subjectivity in general,
Mm-hmm.
and then different ways of thinking, or different types of theories about reasons, I guess is one way to put it. So with respect to subjectivity, one thing that's important to note is that when we say about anything that it is subjective, well, we should ask ourselves, what does that mean? What does it amount to for something to be subjective?
Yeah.
And so I might say that to give an example that most people, at least many people would agree on, the claim chocolate is better than vanilla is subjective. So what does that amount to? And what I think it amounts to is that whether it's true, whether the claim is true, the claim is chocolate is better than vanilla, depends in some way, depends upon subject. Depends on some feature of a subject. Okay. So that it might be true for some subjects. For some subjects, chocolate's better than vanilla, but not for other subjects.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So, what is that kind of dependence? Because, so take a different claim. Take the fact that I'm in pain. Okay. So start over. For something to be subjective, it means it depends on the subject, right?
Yeah. So let me interrupt you there and take a further step backwards
Okay.
and say I referred earlier to the objective world, to the world of objects. Okay, so this is fishes and fiddler crabs and the Department of Defense and rocks and stones and trees and all the many objects, natural and artificial, in the universe. There's a subjective world too, and I don't know, Jason, if you object to my use of the word world, but there definitely is an objective world. And there definitely is also a subjective world. There's the world of my memories, uh, the psychological connection that I have to myself yesterday and last year and a decade ago and my childhood and so forth. So there's this whole tissue of memory that I've got with me. There's also all kinds of expectations that I have personally and professionally uh, in my life. And then there are things like preferences, like chocolate or vanilla. Um, and so, I see the good in both, but if you're going to nail me down, I'm probably going to go for chocolate. So,
So, all
yeah.
right, sorry.
So I think it's important, especially for those who are inexperienced with the language of philosophy, that the problem, Jason, is that the word subject means 5 different things. It's got a meaning in sentence structure, and it's got a meaning
Yeah.
something like a synonym of topic. So I've got to be careful not to say the subject of our discussion and so forth. So the word subject has lots of different meanings. The word object, not so much. I mean, an object is kind of an object. Uh, so notice that when we talk about objects, we're talking about something fairly unproblematical that we can agree that, oh no, yeah, here we go. I mean, I'm holding an object in my hand, am I not, Jason?
Yes. You are.
And you want to give a name to this object?
Charlie.
Do you want to give a common name, not a proper name to this
Well,
object?
I couldn't come up with what Ringo said was the name of his haircut. What do you call that haircut? Uh,
Yeah, and I forget
yeah,
the name.
yeah, something like, you know, Spencer. I don't know. Yeah,
Herman or something. Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah,
Herbert.
yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. So yeah, that's a pen that you have.
You know what we call this in England? A finger.
I don't know. Yes, very good.
Yeah. I think that's another Beatleism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. So subject
so
and object.
yeah. Thank you for that because I think I was using the term subject and expecting our audience to understand what I meant. So a subject, as I'm using it, is a conscious being essentially. So when we're talking about consciousness and states of consciousness like
Like memory and expectation and preference.
and desire, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, we talk about the one who has it, like the one who feels the desire, who has the memory. That one is the subject who is having the desire for chocolate or whatever, what have you, right? So
Yeah.
that's where the word subject comes from. Okay, so now there, as you say, there's this subjective world, and as what I would say is this: what you're talking about is the subjective world, the world of feelings, desires, and mental states. That's actually part of the objective world.
Good.
I'm yes, yes. This is going to take us too long, probably, but it's worth it because I could be wrong about this, and you can explain to me why I am. But I think of mental states as completely objective in the relevant sense. Okay, so consider. So I said, remember that to be subjective is to be dependent on the subject.
Yeah.
Now consider the fact that I'm in pain. Consider the fact that Marion is having a histamine reaction to orange peel oil. Is that an objective fact or a subjective fact? That Marion is experiencing pain
Well, you
because
know, it's objective, isn't it?
it is. I
You
think so. Right.
bastard.
That's
You
right.
heartless bastard.
Yes, I try. I try. Yes, our audience should know that in most dictionaries, if you look up the dictionary, a philosopher, it says "see asshole."
That's too strong, surely. Believe me, my dear friend, you're no worse than a heartless bastard.
Oh, okay. So see heartless bastard. It says. See bastard, comma heartless. Um, so 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 yes, the fact that I'm in pain, the fact that Marion's suffering, is an objective fact. So that therefore, all of these kinds of mental phenomena are objective facts. So what do we mean by a subjective fact? Well, the fact that I gave was chocolate is better than vanilla. Chocolate is better than vanilla, which on its surface is about stuff out in the world, right?
Yes,
It's
yeah,
about chocolate and vanilla and how they rank.
yeah.
Okay. Uh, that fact, I'm saying, that fact is subjective. It's not in the object that chocolate is better than vanilla. It's in the subject, right? The subject, in a certain sense, the subject's reaction constitutes the fact that chocolate is better than vanilla. So some subjects react more positively to the to the feel and taste of chocolate than they do to vanilla. And they're apt to report that as chocolate's better, or I like chocolate better, or I prefer chocolate, right? Other subjects react differently. They react better to vanilla than to chocolate, and they're apt to say vanilla's better. I like vanilla better than chocolate. So there's no fact in the world about which one is better. There is no fact external to any subject, right? No fact, and importantly, it's not just external to any subject, it's external to any subject's reaction. It's our reaction that constitute chocolates being better than vanilla. I prefer chocolate to vanilla. So for me, chocolate is better than vanilla. My mother doesn't like chocolate. She prefers vanilla. So for her, vanilla is better than chocolate. And so uh, there, so the fact that chocolate is better than vanilla is completely subjective. It is dependent on the reactions, the attitudes, something like that. The reactions, attitudes of subjects. Some subjects have certain kinds of reactions, and so for them, it's true that chocolate is better than vanilla. Other subjects have different kind of reactions, and so for them, it's true that vanilla is better than chocolate. So it's a subjective fact because it depends on the reactions or attitudes, feelings. I'm not sure exactly how to say it. It depends. I'll just say reactions on the reactions of subjects. So that's what subjectivity is. It's dependent on the reactions of subjects.
Okay. So it's true that for some people, chocolate is better than vanilla, and for other people, vanilla is better than chocolate.
Yeah. So one thing is that what is this fact that chocolate is better than vanilla? Is it even a fact? Well, what we can say is what it is for chocolate to be better than vanilla is for a subject to prefer
I
chocolate
feel
to
that
vanilla.
way.
They feel that way. That's all it is, right? And often we don't want to call that a fact. We call it an opinion or something like that, or a
Mhm,
preference or a taste, something like that, right? We're
mhm,
reluctant to call it a fact, even. And I
mhm.
agree. I think it's probably not appropriately not called a fact, right? It's not a fact of the matter, so to speak, that chocolate is better than vanilla. Right? There is no fact of the matter about whether chocolate is better than vanilla. That's not something out there in the world, precisely because there's this subjective element.
Can we remove the comparative and get a better understanding of the relation of value to fact, right? Because we could say, or is this a distortion for me to say that I value chocolate more highly than I do vanilla?
I worry that talking about what I value opens a big can of worms.
Yeah, that's the can of worms that I'm really dying to open, Jason.
Okay, yeah, yeah. And I do too. I want to talk about that. So let me just say, immediately it's ambiguous. I value X is ambiguous between I believe that X is valuable
Mm-hmm.
and something like I care about X.
Uh-huh.
Those
Yeah.
aren't the same,
Yeah. Yeah. Sure, sure. I mean, there's lots of things that are valuable that I don't necessarily care about.
right? And
So
a
somehow we
nihilist,
got to get to what good is,
yeah,
right? And it's unfortunate. See, I mean, if we start with the subject, the easiest way or the way we have gone about understanding subjectivity is with this comparative claim that vanilla is better than chocolate or chocolate is better than vanilla, right? But what the word better means is more good.
yeah. How about this? Raw onions are good. That's not a comparative claim.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Um, yeah,
So for, so to me, raw onions are horrible. I hate the taste of them. But
really?
to a lot of people, they love the taste of raw
I
onions.
mean, I like raw onions as sort of a condiment, right? I mean, I'm not going to just munch down on a raw onion.
Well, when I
Uh,
say I dislike,
without disclosing too much of our private lives, uh, I'm not horribly averse to eating a hot dog. And when I eat a hot dog, uh, I would never put ketchup on a hot dog. Uh,
That's barbaric.
that's just, I don't want to go as far as barbaric because I have family members who will put ketchup on their hot dogs. But to me, it's mustard and onion.
So for me, it's mustard, and if there are pickles, pickles. But just mustard is fine. Now,
Interesting. Dill
and
pickle.
nothing else. Dill pickles, sweet pickles are one of the worst things that God ever created. Um, but my mother, to go back to her, she'll eat a hot dog just with raw onion. That's it, just raw onion. No mustard, no ketchup, no relish, just raw onion. Now that's what I find that's inedible to me.
Well, um, so that's a subjective thing, right?
Yeah.
So all right. So so we can say that subjectively chocolate is better than vanilla or vanilla is better than chocolate. And we can say subjectively raw onion is good or raw onion is the grossest thing.
Yeah. It's a subjective judgment, and what that means is that the judgment depends upon the subject's reaction.
Okay. So, can you name anything? Can you name an object that is good?
Well, I can certainly name mental states that are good,
Yeah,
right? And this is
can you
why.
name an object? Because okay, okay, tell me a mental state that's good.
Well, look, a brain is an object, and a mental state is a configuration of certain parts of the brain,
Yeah,
right? So I think so. I guess I'm assuming some kind of uh, I don't know if materialism is the right word. I'm assuming that there's nothing more to mental life than what's in the
yeah.
physical world.
I don't think we should
But
talk about mental states yet.
so here's the problem: there are many philosophers, including um, lots of philosophers who think that reasons are in value as object given, who think that only mental states have intrinsic value. Right?
Mhm.
So what I should have said to you is, well, you asked me to name an object that is good, and I took you to mean name an object that is intrinsically good. But if you were to ask me name an object that's just good, whether it's intrinsic or extrinsic, I could say, sure, my car, my Honda CRV is good. It's extrinsically good. I doubt that it has intrinsic value, but it has a lot of extrinsic value, a lot of extrinsic goodness. Now, but it's an interesting question that philosophers have disagreed about, whether there are any non-conscious objects, that is, objects that are not part of consciousness, that are intrinsically good. I tend to think there are, but that's not.
Wouldn't something like water be an example of an intrinsic good
Well,
substance?
it's certainly extrinsically good because the way it facilitates life and life. So a great suggestion for something that's intrinsically good that's not consciousness is life, right? Some people have suggested this,
That's a pretty
right?
broad,
It
amorphous
is,
concept.
it is, but that would imply that every living thing is intrinsically good. So the jackrabbit or I guess I don't have jackrabbits near me. I have Western cottontails, I think. They're intrinsically good. There may be some jackrabbits around. I tend to see
I
the
think
bunnies,
there's some
not the.
jackrabbits around where you are,
There probably are.
but
I
I'm
don't
not
see them.
around where you are.
Yeah.
We definitely don't
I,
have it in Georgia.
um, yeah, or the tomato plants growing in my garden are intrinsically good in virtue of being alive. That's controversial, and I don't think that so. So nothing about Parfit's view depends upon it, right? What's important for us is that reasons are object given, not subject given, and really what that comes down to is reasons are objective and not subjective.
Yeah,
Um, So just to return to that briefly, so suffering or pain, I say, is intrinsically good. And what that means is that we always have reasons, pro tanto, to avoid suffering, to avoid pain, to want that it not occur, to want that it cease when it does occur. And those reasons come from the object. Right? And if we're treating pain as an object, which I think we should, it's the nature of the object, the nature of pain, that provides the reasons. Nothing about the subject, nothing about the one who's undergoing pain provides the reasons. So in other words, it's not because I don't want there to be pain that pain is intrinsically bad. It's because of what pain is that pain is intrinsically bad.
And what is pain?
Well, you know it when you see it. You feel it.
Like pornography.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. No, I mean, you can say a little bit more. It's the characteristic mental state that is caused by bodily damage and produces certain kinds of behavior. But I think, in essence, pain is a first-person experiential state, and you don't know the essence of pain until you endure it. We've all endured it, so every human endures pain of some degree, manner, type. So we know what pain is in virtue of enduring it. You know.
And it's intrinsically good because it's this
intrinsically bad. Intrinsically bad.
Oh, it's intrinsically bad. Okay, okay.
Did I say good? I meant
I
bad.
think you
If
did.
I said good,
I think you
okay.
did.
I
Okay. It's intrinsically bad because
it's intrinsically bad. Yeah. So if I
because it
said
gives
good,
us
I totally
reason
misspoke.
to avoid it.
Yeah. Yeah. Pain is such that its very nature gives us reason to avoid it. Right. To want that it not occur. That's what its intrinsic badness consists in. The fact that its very nature gives us reasons to avoid it. Pleasure is intrinsically good, but pleasure is kind of the opposite. And again, it's pro tanto, right? So we always have reason to want that pleasure occur. Now, we may have reason to want that it not occur in particular cases. Too much pleasure might be a bad thing extrinsically, because too much pleasure makes us, I don't know, sloth-like or something. I don't know, right?
Well, unfortunately, we have learned that there are drugs that give pleasure, but also do great harm.
The drugs might have side effects that do great harm, but the thing is that if you just spend your life experiencing pleasure and doing nothing else, that seems like that's not a good life, right? And so that means that something good, something intrinsically good, namely pleasure, can also be extrinsically bad.
Right.
But its intrinsic goodness consists in the fact that we always have reason to want that it occur, pro tanto reason to want that it occur.
Yeah.
And it's object given. It's provided by the thing. It's the nature of pleasure that gives us reason to want. It's not that I want the pleasure. It's nothing about my attitudes or reactions that make pleasure good. It's good in and of itself, just because of what it is.
Okay. So is this a fine distinction that when something is good, I might want it, but my wanting it doesn't make it good?
Yes.
I mean, is that too fine a distinction?
I don't think it's a too fine a distinction at all. I thought, is it a good distinction? It's a good distinction. It's an important one. It may not be easy to understand the distinction, but it's a very important one. I mean, I want things, presumably I want them because I believe that they're good, right? But my wanting them doesn't make them good. And after all, if they did, then I should just want the things that are right at hand, right? Um, like hunger's right at hand. Hunger is very readily available to all of us, right? And if my wanting something made it good, then I could just want hunger, and therefore hunger would be good. Intrinsic, we're talking about intrinsic goodness, right?
Yeah.
That seems silly. Pain really is right at hand too. All of us have the capacity to cause ourselves pain. Okay? So if wanting something made it good, then I could just want pain, and then pain would be intrinsically good. So if wanting things made them good, I should just want the things that are readily available, and I'd have what's good, right? So, hunger, pain. that that seems to be a pretty good indication,
Mhm.
in my mind at least, is a pretty good indication that what's good isn't like our wanting things don't make things good. And to connect this to subjectivity, what that means is that wanting is a kind of reaction or an attitude. So it isn't that that's making something good, because goodness is object given, not subject given.
Yeah.
It's not a
Yeah,
subjective
yeah.
fact, it's an objective fact.
So, you're better and much more thorough at explaining these concepts than I am. However, I enter into conversations with people, and we talk about what we should do, you know, just usually in a very practical sense. What should we do today? Um, and I always want to claim we should do what we have reasons to do.
Mhm.
Uh, and reasons come from facts, and facts are not contingent upon the subject. And then my interlocutor says, yeah, but ethics are subjective. And you know, I, I, I hesitate to bring that up because I can't speak for the people who say that. And I don't really understand it, but it's something that I've heard a lot, that ethics are subjective, or ethics are just subjective, or ethics are only subjective.
Yeah.
And I think uh, when I press people on this, I hear things like, well, what's true for you isn't true for me. And I think that they're thinking about chocolate and vanilla. They're not thinking about pleasure and pain.
Yeah. So I think they're thinking that ethical statements, like it's wrong to kill,
Uh-huh.
or it's wrong to cause someone to suffer needlessly, are um, are like chocolate is better than vanilla. So in a sense, true for some people, but not for others. And that's a diminished sense of truth and a diminished sense of fact. But that's what they think, that it's not out there in the world. It depends on us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Why do they think that? There's lots of
most
reasons,
of
I
the
suppose.
discussion could be very simple, but it's complicated because the world is complicated and there are a lot of facts, and facts have varying weight, right? So, for example, the pain of my flu shot compared to my suffering with the flu and making other people suffer with the flu. you know? So, uh, 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 certainly I have reason to avoid the pain of the shot, but I have much stronger reasons to get vaccinated against the flu so that I don't get the flu. And more importantly, so that I don't make other people get the flu. I mean, it's bad enough that one person should suffer, right? But when through carelessness or obliviousness, I make other people suffer, that's bad. It's bad to make people suffer needlessly.
Hmm. And that's not just your opinion. It's not just a
Yeah,
subjective judgment.
that's right.
Um, so I mean, I guess I say I'm baffled, but I guess at one time, and maybe I said this before in a previous episode, but at one time, the claim that all moral value is subjective was something that I at least thought that I believed. This was a long time ago when I was a
A
very early
common you
a very early graduate student, so my early 20s. Um,
uh
but
yes, you and I have both suffered through graduate school, and
yeah,
suffering is bad. Uh
yeah, that's true. But I mean, it's a good thing. I mean, suffering. I mean, okay, so graduate school is a place to learn, and hopefully, learning changes your beliefs, right? And so, learning ethics better changed my beliefs. You know, I always had this though. Even when I thought that, so when I was in an undergrad, I at Berkeley, I thought, yeah, of course, ethics is subjective. But there was always this little thing that would pop into my mind when I would say that. And it was something like, well, what about Hitler? Does this mean that it's just my opinion that Hitler was a bad guy and that he did bad things and the Holocaust was evil? Is it just my opinion? Uh, and I thought,
my example is always Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey
yeah,
Dahmer thought that it was okay to kill and eat young men.
right. And am I really saying that there is no fact of the matter here? And it never really sat well with me to say, oh, it is. It's just a matter of opinion, or it's a subjective judgment that Hitler was wrong to kill 6 million innocent Jewish people, you know, among others,
And
right?
yeah, lots of gays and
Yeah,
Roma people and
yeah.
Slavs and all kind of people.
And not to mention all the Russians he killed just because he was fighting a needless war, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and all kinds of others. So that doesn't seem. It certainly never has seemed subjective. It's not just well, I don't like it, but somebody else might. No, it's not. So I was always uncomfortable with that. Um,
Yeah. So uh reasons come from facts. Facts are objective. And what we should do is what we have reason to do.
yeah, we have most reasons to do, all things considered.
Yeah. And I think what leads people to the error that ethics is just subjective is that you and I, got to be humble and remember that nobody can consider all things,
Yeah,
right? However, what this adds up to is not that uh, uh, good is a subjective judgment, but that bad is very often the product of ignorance.
yeah. You know, I mean, it it's hard to inhabit a mindset that you strongly disagree with. So it's hard for me to inhabit and appreciate and fully understand a mindset according to which morality is subjective. So one thing is, if there is anyone listening to this and thinks we're completely missing the boat and don't understand why many people think that morality is subjective, please let us know. Please write a comment. I'd be happy to hear from you. But I think the other thing is there are kind of several different things that people tend to say in this regard. There's no one thing. I mean, sometimes they'll point out, well, some cultures do this, other cultures do that. Who are you to say that your culture has the right attitude?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. I think that is where we should pick it up next time, right?
Okay.
Because we just made a big, or you just made a big move. I mean, it's the move to make from my judgment about right and wrong is precisely that, my judgment. And therefore, ethics are subjective. So the move from subjectivism, and we probably need to say more about the professional philosophers, who make a reasoned presentation about subjectivism, which would entirely be up to you because I don't know. But the move from subjectivism to cultural relativism, and fights break out over cultural relativism. I don't know about fights breaking out over subjectivism. So we ought to deal with that. Okay. Next
Sounds
time.
good. Yep.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jason.
Thank
And
you.
thank you to our audience, vast or few, as the case may be.
Yeah.
And see you next time.